Well, hello everybody! It's story time! Are you ready for a new story? This week I've been telling my Year 3 students a really cool story about a dragon with 7 heads. Oof, they loved it, so I thought I would share it with you too. This is a story from this book called Girls, Goddesses and Giants by Lari Don. And she collected many stories from around the world about really cool heroines. So without further ado, this is the story of Chi and the 7-headed dragon. Dragons can be very awkward neighbors. So when the Emperor of China saw a dragon settle into the cave at the top of the mountain behind his palace, he wasn't pleased. It was the biggest, scariest dragon he had ever seen. It had 7 heads on 7 snaky necks attached to one thick green scaly body. And each individual head had 99 sharp yellow teeth. I'm sure you can work out how many teeth the dragon had. But the emperor didn't bother doing the sums, and neither do I. He just knew it was far too many teeth. And he said, "I can't have a dragon living above my palace. If it comes out of that cave, it might fly down here and frighten my party guests and set fire to my palace. It might even eat me." Ugh. So he summoned his wise men and women and he asked them, "How do I get rid of this dragon?" The wise men and women frowned and thought, it's not easy to get rid of a dragon, oh great emperor. But we could make sure it doesn't leave its cave. Then it wouldn't threaten your palace. "But how could we do that?" demanded the emperor. "If we feed the dragon its favorite food at the mouth of the cave, then it won't leave the cave." "Oh, that is a great idea," said the emperor. "What is its favorite food?" The wise men and women looked at it a bit shifty and a bit embarrassed. So the emperor stamped his feet until they admitted that the long green 7-headed dragon's favorite food was little girls. "Little girls?" said the emperor. "Little girls? But I can't feed little girls to the dragon. I don't want to feed my own daughters to it, and I don't want to feed the daughters of my cooks or soldiers or gardeners or civil servants to it either, because then they wouldn't like me and they wouldn't work for me." The wise men and women looked at each other and said, "Well, there are a lot of farmers and fishermen and merchants outside of your palace. They have daughters. You could feed their little girls to the dragon to keep it safely in the cave." So the emperor demanded a silk bag filled with the names of all the families in China who didn't work in his palace. And every Friday morning, he picked out a name. Then a messenger on a fat horse rode to the family. And he announced in a loud, shouty voice, "By order of the emperor, you must feed one of your little girls to the 7-headed dragon. But because the emperor is kind and merciful, you may choose which of your daughters to give to the dragon." So each week, a family would take a little girl up the mountain. They would all walk up a steep, winding path to the very top, where they would sit the little girl outside the cave and then bang a big brass gong. And the boom of the gong told the dragon that his tea was ready, and then the family would go away, leaving the little girl on top of the mountain to be eaten. Over weeks and months and years, the steep path to the summit got wider, trodden down by the many feet which had climbed up and the fewer feet which had walked slowly and sadly back down. But it worked. It worked perfectly from the emperor's point of view, because the dragon stayed in the cave and didn't bother him at all. Then one Friday, the name he pulled out of the silk bag was Li, a rice farmer. So the messenger rode to Li's farm and said in a very bored voice, because he'd been doing this every single week for years, "By order of the emperor, you must feed one of your little girls to the seven-headed dragon. But because the emperor is kind and merciful, you can choose which of your daughters to give to the dragon." And Li looked at his 3 little girls with tears in his eyes. His youngest daughter, whose name was Chi, thought this was a dreadful thing to ask any father to do. To choose one of his children to give to a dragon? So, to save her father from making such a terrible choice, and to save her big sisters from the dragon, Chi said, "I will go. I will go and meet the dragon. But I would like to ask you 3 favors. Father, I'd like to take the sword that hangs over the fireplace. And I'd like you to give me 7 barrels of your best sticky rice. And I'd like to go up the mountain on my own." So the next morning, Chi left the farm with a long sword in her belt, pulling behind her a cart loaded with 7 barrels of sticky rice. And as she walked up the mountain on her own, she could smell the rice. Her father had cooked the sticky rice before he put it in the barrels. So as she pulled the cart, she was surrounded by the warm, sweet smell of cooked rice. And she knew the rice in the barrels was gluey, gloopy, and glutinous. When she got to the top of the mountain, she placed the 7 barrels of rice in a line. And she hid herself behind the big gong. Then she banged on the gong to tell the dragon his tea was ready. The dragon's heads came out of the cave. 7 huge heads appeared out of the darkness with 99 sharp yellow teeth each. 7 long necks followed, weaving and winding around each other as the heavy body squatted in the cave. 7 heads on 7 necks, hunting for a meal. Each head had to pass over the barrels of rice as it came out of the cave, and each head smelt the rice, the warm, toasty, sweet-scented, sticky rice. The dragon's favorite food was little girls. However, it had eaten nothing but little girls for years now. The dragon breathed the fragrance of the rice, and he thought, "Oh, that smells good. I could have rice for starter and little girl for main course." So the 7 heads dived 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into the 7 barrels of rice, and they started to eat. And as soon as all 7 heads were in the 7 barrels, Chi grasped the hilt of the sword and she ran at the dragon. Ah! The dragon heard her coming, and the dragon attacked with the first 3 heads. But the first, second, and third heads were so deep in in the barrels of rice that they couldn't get out. They were stuck in the barrels. So Chi ran up to the first 3 heads and chop, chop, chop. She cut them off. The next 3 heads attacked. The 4th, 5th, and 6th head hadn't gone so deep into the rice because they had started eating after the first 3 heads. So they managed to pull themselves out of the barrels of sticky rice and started chasing Chi around the mountaintop. But those 3 heads had eaten so much rice, so when they tried to bite her, they realized that their 99 sharp teeth were stuck and glued tight because of the rice. She realized that they couldn't bite her, so she whirled around and chop, chop, chop. She cut off all 3 heads. But the 7th head had gone into the rice last, and by the time it had snaked into the 7th barrel, the dragon's belly was almost full from the rice by the other 6 heads. So the 7th head hadn't gone very deep. So it pulled out of the barrel clean and fast. And the 7th head hadn't eaten very much, so its teeth were not stuck together. When the 7th head started to chase Chi, the 7th head opened its mouth wide, and Chi saw the 99 yellow sharp teeth. So Chi ran away. I would too. As she crouched behind the gong, she thought, I had planned to fight a dragon with all its heads and teeth stuck in rice. I hadn't planned to fight a dragon with 99 teeth snapping at me. And she looked at the path down the mountain, and then she thought, hold on, I've just fought a 7-headed dragon. There is only 1 head right now on that dragon. So she leapt out from behind the gong. She jumped onto a barrel of rice. She waited until the dragon's head snaked towards her. And she sliced it off. Cha! Then Chi kicked the barrels down the mountain to roll down the slope and thud into the back walls of the palace. And she kicked the dragon's head down the mountain to bounce down the slope and squelch into the back of the palace. Brah! Because she thought that since the emperor had happily fed little girls to the dragon for so many years, she thought, well, he can clean up his own mess now. And that is the story of Chi and the 7-headed dragon. See you next time.